Hey guys, here we are. I'm Steven.
Wilson. Hey
We
guys.
got Wilson here. Episode 2 of the video podcast. Welcome to another Tuesday. And so we'll just kind of dive into it and we'll see what comes out.
Best way to do it. Head
Yeah.
first.
So, how was your week, man? How's the last 7 days?
Last 7 days are pretty solid, man. We've got some really interesting things going on in the shop. We've had some turnover, which I think is pretty common early on.
Yeah.
So making some adjustments and working around that. But we actually just brought on the replacement, and so far it's been night and day. Really, really smooth. We always hate to see somebody go. We want every person to work out, but the person that we brought on, I think, is a better fit culturally, and is really taken to it. So we're pretty happy with that, and
For
recovering
those
well.
watching, Wilson's talking about his team in Austin, Texas.
Yeah. So our shop in Austin took off basically like a bottle rocket. I mean, it was so fast, and in order to keep up with that, it's always a great thing, but in order to keep up with it, we had to bring on people really quickly. And anytime you're hiring fast, there's challenges that come with that. And so we've worked through it and really stabilized. So we've got really we've got business booked out at least one job a week for the next 4 weeks. And I think we have two jobs in one of those weeks. And so that actually works out really well because it's given Logan more time to focus on sales while these guys are doing the jobs. And we've got our new guy Colton training. So it's going smooth. There was a couple of hiccups there, but you can't escape that.
So you'll be able to, I'm sure, apply some of the lessons that you may have learned during the one of your guys that transitioned out of the business, applying those lessons to the new guy that's come on board. Any of
Yeah.
those lessons stand out?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. A lot of the lessons I find in every business that I've had, I seem to, you relearn variations of the same lesson. One of the challenges we had with Austin, because we were growing so fast and doing things, and we're really lucky. We are recruiting from pools of people that we're already very close with, people that we already know, and there's some benefits to that because the character of the people that you're going to work with, and there's a lot of advantages. One of the disadvantages, when you know people well, you're more likely to skip important steps like paperwork, right? And so one of the challenges that we had is, obviously there's different pay structure for different types of jobs and different services. And I don't think we did a really clear job of clarifying with him what those different structures were. And that led to some early resentment. And so, a really great lesson, and something that, I'm also being a lot more cognizant of, talking about this with our newer students on the front end as well. It's like, we talk about in our basic model, hey, these are the numbers, but, refinishing and refacing are different. They're going to have, slightly different variations. And you need to be prepared for that. And you need to have your guys prepared for that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Another really great thing that came up and we kind of worked through is, we're bringing our guys on with the intention that they're going to help us open up secondary shops. Our goal is to have another shop in North Austin by June. And so we had a really good opportunity recently to sit down with one of the guys who are training for that level and kind of explain to him on the back end why we have variations in pay. One of his questions was like, well, I don't understand why I'm not making as much money on this job as I am on the other. And we were able to kind of break down. So, from an owner's perspective, you can't pay the same on necessarily every job because you might be overpaying on other jobs so that your guys are getting paid enough to make their ends meet. So you have to make that up on the back end on different jobs. And you can't tell guys, hey, your pay is going to be different for this job because X, Y, Z, unless you want to lose guys.
Having that predictability it's good for us as business owners, and it's good for our technicians and our team members so they can proactively budget their personal lives as well and their finances.
Yep.
So getting transparent around the jobs might pay differently because the cost of goods are different, and setting that clearly up front can be super effective to prevent potential misunderstandings down the road. And having it in paper, allowing them to reference it as the journey unfolds. 3 months from now, after the onboarding or after the interview, they're going to forget a lot of what we told them.
Yeah. Well, it's also an interesting shift, and I think most people experience this, and we've seen this with, guys that we've had come through Cabinet Startup.
Yep.
If you're used to working for somebody else, you have an idea of what fair is, right? And sometimes you take that perspective and bring it in. And we saw this in our solar business. I've seen this in different partnerships I've done. People get this idea of fairness as being a percentage, or fairness being like well, the owner makes this much, I should make this much. And if you're recruiting people on the idea of fairness, if anything changes, they're immediately going to feel, hurt, or something's been taken away from them. Right. And I was like, you can't focus on the idea of what's fair, because it's irrelevant, right? You wouldn't split 50-50 when you're taking on 100% of the risk, because that's not fair, but it's hard to quantify the value of risk. And so instead, what I was telling them is, look, man, you need to look at opportunity, right? If you're providing an opportunity for somebody to make $60,000 a year within 3 months of starting with you, it doesn't matter what's fair or what's not fair, how much money you're making, because all of that is irrelevant to his perspective. His perspective is he's got a new opportunity that's better than his old opportunity. Right. And if he's not happy about the new opportunity, then he should go find something better. And I totally recommend that. Like, if you're working with me and you don't like the opportunity, by all means, go work somewhere else.
Right. And that's what we try to emphasize with my teams, and even with our students, is emphasizing the opportunity. And so what that means is you're going to be working really hard at the beginning. And when it comes to our new hires, things aren't necessarily going to be prioritized to be fair at the beginning, meaning like we have to put in a bunch of work up front, including them having to go through the learning curve. Yep. And as time goes on, their skills develop and their earning potential increases. But the whole emphasis from start throughout the journey is on the opportunity that they're looking to acquire and achieve, not necessarily having the priority be fairness, because that can get really complex and like you mentioned, hard to quantify. Yeah. And so if we all just focus on the results that we're trying to produce, it becomes a lot easier to measure, because it's binary. Did we achieve our goal or not? And that's what we can kind of shift our focus to be on. But yeah, man, that's great. You found someone that wants to jump on the team again and focus on the opportunities that you provide for your guys. Yeah. And so is there anything that we can learn from how you found this new hire?
I mean, we talk about this a lot. We kind of really focus on the everywhere you go approach. Within our circle of friends, well, two parts. One, being aware of just how good the opportunity is. I mean, for somebody to, within 3 months of training, be on target to make $45,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year is really rare. I mean, that's how it was all the time. I know a lot of people who are accountants working, full time at a firm that don't make over $60,000 a year. So being really cognizant of that opportunity when you're presenting to people, and then combine that with the everywhere you go approach. I mean, we are constantly talking like, hey, we're looking to expand. We're going to be bringing on new people within the next couple months. If you know anybody, introduce us. If you have any friends that are looking for work that you think are trustworthy and reliable, introduce us. And we've pushed that really hard. So we've worked really well within our own circle, which, advantages and disadvantages. The big advantages, we know more about the people before we bring them on. Right. The disadvantages, obviously, we have to do a really, really good job with them because it's our own circle we're working within. But it's actually an advantage, man. It's keeping honest people honest. It makes us work harder to provide a better work environment for them.
Especially set expectations at the beginning.
Yeah,
we can maintain that friendship, but also still take the process very seriously.
Yes, and it's got to be both. Yeah, as soon as you start making exceptions because it's a friend, you run into issues.
That's awesome, man. That's cool. You guys are moving right along. A little bit of update with my guys. I was at a business conference for majority of the week. It's been a good kind of learning experience, in a good way though, in the sense that like I've been able to, over the past couple months, really focus on transitioning my top guys to more of a partnership model. Right. And that's kind of the opportunity that I like to emphasize with even my new hires now, is giving them a growth plan and giving them an ability to run and manage their own teams if that's what they want. And
Yep.
so that's been kind of the ambition of some of my guys. And we've been slowly but surely working towards that. And while I was at the business conference, I kind of got a taste of what that end result would be like. And it was great. They were able to deal with some challenges that came up. We got jobs done, and everything went pretty smoothly. So
Fully self-sufficient.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely looking that way. So guys in my Tampa shop, Orlando shop, we got guys in Ocala team. I just had another guy hit me up who I was talking with for a little bit about the potential of him going through that same plan of becoming a partner down the road. But he was kind of on the fence for a little while, and it seems
Yep.
like he kind of determined what he really wants, and he's willing to kind of commit now. And
Cool.
so I got that confirmation a little bit earlier today. So looking
That's
forward
awesome.
to getting that
Yeah.
ball rolling. So Ocala is a good market. It's a lot of retirees, and there's not a ton of people doing this over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting because that ties into what we were just talking about with the opportunity. What do you think changed for him that he was able to recognize this is where he wanted to go?
I think people start to realize the value of systems when it comes to not only how to handle the challenges and organize the business, but how to generate more business.
Yeah.
A lot of guys will see, oh, I learned how to paint cabinets, so now I'm going to go and start my own cabinet painting business and do it on my own. It's a great idea, and that's where everyone, I guess, starts. But it doesn't take long to realize, oh, there actually is a need to be able to predictably grow the business and have confidence in you having jobs, not only this week, but what's going to happen 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month from now. Having a way to predictably generate leads and convert those into projects that are going to pay you as high as that you want to be paid or expect to be paid. It can be challenging. And so sometimes people take a little bit of time to realize that. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what's been going on. And so looking forward to getting the ball rolling again with him and seeing what comes of it.
Well, that is it's funny that would be the challenge for him too, because one of the things we see a lot with people that are considering cabinet startup is they're like, well, I just need to know how to do the work. I'm like, well, that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
Being a chef doesn't mean you're going to have a successful restaurant. That's the two things are very loosely related, in a lot of ways. And McDonald's is my favorite example. I've never walked out of McDonald's and thought that was the best burger ever, but I've walked out of a lot of McDonald's.
Yeah, their system works.
The system absolutely works. And I think if you've never been in a situation where the system is not working and you're 100% responsible for it, it's hard to, I guess, wrap your mind around just how valuable that system can be. But if you've been in that storm, if you've been responsible for a system that's not working, you've learned very quickly that it's probably the most valuable part of the business.
I agree. When it comes to skills, most people can learn any skill with enough time and commitment and consistent effort. But when it comes to systems, it can be very challenging, not impossible, but very challenging to develop the skills of the service you're providing and develop the skills of managing the business at the same time. And it's not impossible. We've had plenty of students go through that process where they're starting on their own and they're, in a sense, responsible for everything in the business. And it kind of starts to segue into the topic I wanted to discuss with you is prioritizing the tasks that you have. Because when you are responsible for everything, it inadvertently means that you never have a period of time where you don't have something to do.
Right.
And it can be challenging determining which task is more important or which task is going to help move that needle further towards your goal. Because sometimes we can find ourselves procrastinating and being productive at the same time, but not productive with the right things. And when we get caught up doing that, we're spinning our wheels in a sense. And so maybe we can kind of segue into that topic where we talk about how to prioritize the never-ending to-do list.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I like thinking of like when you're building your business. My favorite analogy is it's like driving a car when you're also responsible for building the car.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it's like they throw four wheels in the first engine they find together and they start driving. And they're like, I'm so busy watching the road right now that I don't have time to think about, brakes. I'm so busy watching the road. I don't have time to think about a windshield, airbags, a steering
Right.
column. I mean, just little things that make driving so much easier.
Right.
And it can be really hard because when the road's coming at you, it always feels fast, right? It really does, especially in your business. Everything feels like a big deal. And you probably save a lot of time and energy by being able to pull over occasionally and go, okay, cool. Hey, what do we need to focus on?
Right.
And so, for me, I think when I think of prioritization, just like we were talking about, you have to have a system for it. I think a system is the most important thing, but I would actually almost argue setting time aside to make that system work, right? The first priority has to be a system for determining your priorities.
And maybe real quick, sorry to cut you off, but I feel there may be people listening to this that don't have a lot of clarity around what system actually means, what the word system means. It might be worth kind of defining or describing what that is. In other words, a system literally is a step-by-step process on how to do something. It doesn't have to be this fancy software or this super complicated handbook. A system is certainly a predetermined way of doing things. And you
Yes.
have a system or a process for every part of your business, and even determining on which tasks are most important.
Yeah. Well, and it's developing that. One of the things I like about thinking of systems that way is because it's not just the process you use for a particular activity. It can also be the process you use for thinking about things.
Yeah.
And people automatically fall into systems. Like if your system of accounting is spending money and not looking, it is a system. It just is a bad system, right? And you have a system for everything in your life, just may not have a good one. If people stop and think about it, you always put the same sock on first every morning. You have a system. Whether or not you've thought through that system is an entirely different thing. But yeah, so when you define a system, you're thinking of it as a series or steps of processes. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a really good definition. It's general enough that you can apply it to a lot of things, but yeah, it doesn't need to be complicated. Yeah, I know lots of people that run 6 and 7 figure businesses that don't use much software at all. It's harder. It's way harder, but you can do it.
Right. It becomes very difficult to train other people when you don't have a predetermined way of doing things.
Correct.
You inevitably, as the business owner, will be involved in every part of the business in a bad way because you don't have a clear, defined way of training people. You may find yourself getting upset at the production of your team when they don't clearly know how you want things done. You may have told them, but no one's going to have a concrete memory. And if they don't have a way to reference how you want things to be done, it's going to be very hard to get the same results or have things done the same way.
Yeah. And maybe that's the next benefit of the system, right? It's a step-by-step process that can then carry on without you, which is huge. And, thinking back to a conversation you and I had the other day, same thing with like your accounting, right? When you don't have accounting, what's the biggest problem? Like if you don't have systems for your businesses, you can't sell those businesses. You can't ever get out of them. Because if somebody comes and looks at your business for a day and sees that it's all you making everything happen, they're like, I don't want that. I would never buy that.
Right. That's the biggest thing that I feel contractors miss the ball on when they want to retire eventually, and they're running a business that really is making them, $300,000 net a year. And they think, oh, I can sell this business for $1 million easy. Well, if they don't have clear accounting systems or a clear way for someone to see, okay, how the numbers were managed, then it's very hard for them to prove and present that business as being as profitable as they are telling the potential buyer that it is. So 100%, yes, systems for accounting are hugely important. And when it comes, kind of back to maybe the beginning of starting a business or running a business and you're doing everything at the same time, what are some systems that we could help share with these people who have a bunch of things to do at the same time, and they have that never-ending to-do list. You mentioned a system for thinking. Maybe we can go over an example of that.
Yeah. So my favorite is the Eisenhower Matrix, named after the famous general Dwight Eisenhower, who, if you're a history nerd, which I kind of am, I mean, this man led the whole, like basically the whole war effort in World War II. And there are so many different theaters going on. I mean, it's what he was doing is crazy. The amount of work and amount of many millions of people and things he's trying to manage at the same time. And you got to wonder, like, he has the same number of hours in the day as you do, same number of hours as me. And so the way he thought of his system is essentially 4 quadrants where things were rated in terms of increasing in importance and increasing in urgency, right? How soon does it need to be done and how big of a deal is it? Yeah. And essentially you have the first quadrant. The thing that's most important is we have highly important tasks that are also urgent, right? If it's highly important and it needs to be done right now, the only solution is to do it right now. Now, a big caveat, one of the things I see people making mistakes on is not having a real clear idea of what actually is important and what is not important.
True.
And you do have to define it. Like in a business, I would say number one most important thing is revenue, right? Yeah. If you're spending time on your accounting system, but you have 0 customers, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's going to be hard to screw up your accounting when you don't have any money.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, and so you got to be able to determine, like, how important is this, and be really honest with it. The next quadrant, quadrant 2, is things that are highly important, but not urgent. And this is where I think most people screw up, right? Because, a lot of people know, oh yeah, I need to earn revenue, but the important, non-urgent stuff, that would be like your accounting system. You can run a business for quite a while without an accounting system, but then when it comes tax time, you're going to get hit really hard, right? Especially if you're not used to setting money aside for taxes, which so many people aren't, right? And so being able with that, what he considers that's the zone for scheduling, right? So you've got the zone where you do it right now. Zone 1, zone 2 is where you actually schedule things. So I need to develop an accounting system next Tuesday at 10 to 12 p.m. I'm going to work on this, right? Yep. Or whatever day you choose, but it's got to be something that's scheduled. And you also have to have the discipline to stick to it. And, caveat, all of these systems only work if you have the discipline to stick to it. The world's best CRM doesn't work if you don't log in.
It works if you work.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. We talk to our students that all the time. Like, we can give you a system that has worked, 50 times now, but if you don't use it, odds are in 6 months, you're going to be really upset with your results. Yep. The next zone 3, is things that are low importance, but high urgency. And this one's really interesting because this is where he recommends delegating, right? But this is where actually most people spend their time. I like to think of this as productive procrastination. Yeah. It's like, hey, I've got to get, I need to work on this accounting system, but man, my laundry is stacking up and we haven't cleaned the house. And, I really should take my kids to the park. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take your kids to the park. You should, right? But that should be zone 2 and it should be scheduled. Right. Right. Not an urgent thing. And so people come up with all these creative ways of doing these tasks that they have to do right now. And that's the number one thing that holds business owners back, right? It's like, oh, I got to go do this. I got to go do this. We talked about this with one of our partners, being on job sites when he doesn't need to be because it needs to be done right then in his mind. That's not necessarily true.
Right. Especially if you have a team and you're able to delegate things. It's not that you can't be productive on the job site, but is generating sales potentially more important? Very well could be.
Well, and I think sometimes people have this belief that, I don't have a team, so I can't delegate, right? And I run into this all the time. Anybody that knows me, like, I'm borderline colorblind. I really can't. So if somebody's like, hey, Wilson, can you design this to be pretty? The answer is absolutely not. I can't do it. I have no taste for design. But I do know I can go onto Fiverr and I can pay somebody that does this for a living, like 30 or 50 bucks. I don't have to learn new software. I don't have to pretend that I know what I'm looking at. They can give it to me and go, okay, thumbs up or thumbs down. It's really simple. there are lots of ways of delegating, right? There's lots of menial tasks. People are like, oh, I need to go to the post office. It's like, okay, is there a high schooler that lives in your neighborhood? Can you pay them $10 an hour to go do crappy tasks for you that you don't feel like doing?
Yeah.
The answer is almost always yes. And so we create these ideas in our heads of why we can't do this thing. There's not that many tasks that are low urgency, or I'm sorry, low importance but high urgency, that you can't delegate it, because even if the high schooler screws it up, it wasn't that important in the first place. That's why it's a category.
So that would be the third category then.
Yeah. So that's things that need to be delegated. It's going to be low importance and high urgency. And then, the last thing is, low importance and low urgency. And so for all of you that, hate to call it out, listen, I love Netflix, don't get me wrong, but if you're watching Netflix when your business is struggling, I have no advice for that, stop. Right. Yeah. At a certain point, it's like, hey, what are you going to do? But you'd be amazed. A lot of people, one of the biggest challenges I think with entrepreneurship, and you and I have talked about this, like I have been so stressed out in my business before that my stomach hurts.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And the idea of sitting down on the couch and watching Netflix until I feel better is great. But I found I don't think there are enough episodes on all of Netflix to make me feel better, because when I turn off the TV, it's still there. You got to
heard it say once, running away from the problem is simply running away from the solution.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So section 4 is just stuff that you need to forget about. But one of the cool things about the process, if you're using the Eisenhower Matrix, the way I like to do it is I'll list out every single task I can think of, anything that is on my mind.
You can even put them, it's reflected, isn't it?
No, you can read it. Yeah.
You can read that?
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay. It's reflected on my screen.
Now it's becoming blurry. Well, so I have like a high definition version of this, like that we've already designed for students, that I'll actually put in the show notes so people can click on it and download it. But even before I've separated them out like that, like I will just make a list. I'll just write down like 100 things, anything's on my mind. Like, for example, since we're in West Virginia right now, it's going to snow on Monday. My heaviest jacket is a North Face hoodie. All right. This is my Texas, guys. I'm from Texas. Yeah. I have 2 pairs of long pants. I mean, like I am in so much crap when this thing happens. And so one of the things that made it to my list like 2 weeks ago was like, hey, I need to go buy warm clothes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where does that fall on the list? Right. Is it urgent? I mean, it's 2 weeks away. Is it important? I don't know. Do I need to leave my house? It's a question to consider. And so I'll make a list, and you'd be amazed. Some of the stuff that makes it on my list sometimes is like really silly.
Yeah,
it really is. But it's taking up mental space. So I'll make a list of probably 20, 30 things, and I'll make 15 of those things go to the non-urgent, not important. You cross them out, you never look at them again, but they're no longer taking up mental space. Yeah. And just the clarity of not having it on your mind is valuable, in my opinion.
For sure. So it may be helpful for people who maybe already have a to-do list, to start designating them into these quadrants and then setting expectations or a timeline for yourself to achieve some of these things. And if you're the type of person who just tries to keep everything in their head, and you may feel a lot of anxiety all the time, take the time to create that to-do list first, get all of that out of your head, and then start designating the importance of those tasks. And that way you can start chipping away at them every week. And it's a good idea to do this every Monday. That way you kind of can start the week off with a game plan of sorts and start chipping away at some of those things that might be really important and urgent, or might not be. And it allows you to be more focused, allows you to optimize your energy a lot more. And it's definitely worth the 10, 15 minutes it might take you to do on a Monday morning, so you can have a good game plan for the week.
How many planning sessions do you typically do for yourself in a week?
I typically at least once a week.
Okay.
Yeah. I like to do it on Sundays personally, because I usually will carve out some downtime on Sundays, and planning is relaxing for me. And so And so it helps me relax when I know what I'm going to do. And
Yeah.
so I like to take what's on my to-do list, anything that was left over from the week prior, I'll designate importance, and then I'll think of things that I want to do the week coming up, and I'll do the same thing. And then that way on Monday morning, I usually hit the ground running.
Yeah, I prefer Sundays as well.
Yeah.
It's, the downside with Sundays for some people is if you have a lot of family, a lot of commitments, sometimes it gets pushed off. And in terms of things that are going to move your business forward, I would say that like hour or 2 hours on Sunday or Monday morning or whenever you do it, it's probably the most important thing you're going to do throughout the course of your week.
For sure.
Yeah, I think prioritizing is the number one reason that people don't get the results that they want. Was it Bill? Somebody famous said, people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year.
Yeah. Not sure who said that, but I have heard that before and completely agree.
Yeah, it hits home.
So maybe we can talk about I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Go ahead. No.
We can talk about the application specific to trade-based businesses, whether it's cabinet refinishing like our businesses or other types. One of the primary things as I see as far as importance goes, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, is generating sales. And a lot of times people will get started, they get some jobs on their calendar, and then they focus on everything that doesn't have to do with sales. And then they wait till they need the sales to start figuring out how they're going to generate more. And that often will result in a lot of stress and pressure. And when you have stress and pressure, it's really a recipe for disaster inside of a sales appointment, because you're going to show up to that sales appointment with a lot of desperation and unconscious anxiety that you will translate or transcribe onto the person.
Commission breath is what we like to call it.
What's that?
Commission breath.
Yeah. And so you're not going to be able to as easily make your prospect, your potential customer, feel at ease with you and feel comfortable with you. You want to go into those appointments with an air of indifference. You want to focus on bringing them value and focus on their needs, not your need to close the deal. And when you do that, you're going to have a lot more likelihood to close that deal because you're focusing on them and what they are trying to achieve. And so you really want to have, like we talked about earlier as well, a system for that, a predictable way to generate leads. You don't want to have to wait for word of mouth, because if you go a week or so with no calls, then that's going to start brewing some stress. Yep. If you have a systemized way that is generating leads for you, well, then that's one less thing that you have to think about on a daily basis. And if you have some way to organize those leads, they're coming into your system in an automatic way. So
well, kind of taking it a step further, if you're going to take the time to implement a system for how you're going to get leads, right? The next logical step is then take a time to separate a system for how you're going to handle those leads.
Yes.
In like your business, especially, I know for a fact when those leads come in, your sales reps on it, right? They're not, they're not sitting in the system for a long time. They're getting followed up with every single week.
They automatically get a text message. They automatically get an email. And then we have a person actually follow up with a phone call. And then regardless of what happens, there's automated emails that drip until they do become a customer or tell us to stop.
Yeah, you've got a system for what the person's going to say on the phone. You've got a system for what they're going to say when they show up to the house for the appointment. You've got a system for how they close, for how they're tracking everything in the house. I mean, it's and one of the things that I think is really tough in sales is if you don't have a system, you have no way of knowing why something went wrong in that sales appointment. Like if you're saying something different every single time, how are you going to know what it was that threw them off? Right. Like there's no consistency and you can't scale that. And then again, you're not going to be able to replace yourself. And I think a lot of people are afraid of creating that consistency because they don't want to feel fake.
Right.
And so they just leave it alone. But you can have all the best leads in the world. And if you have a crappy system for the sales, you're not going to close nearly as many deals and you're going to be struggling.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a verbatim script that you follow, but you can have a guideline. For example, like the first thing you want to do is introduce yourself.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Steven versus good afternoon, my name is Steven. Shouldn't create a huge difference, but you're introducing yourself.
Yep.
Then you're spending some time building rapport. Whether you talk about their dog or you talk about their car may or may not make a difference. You want to have a little intuition on what you think is important to them. If there's pictures of their dog, or if their dog's wearing little dog clothes, then you know that there's some importance on the dog. If there's a brand new car in the driveway that's super shiny, they probably have a lot of importance on the car.
You have the
So
giant football sign in the yard that says my kid plays football at.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can go from there into asking specific questions, and that those questions can guide the sales conversation. So you don't have to worry about saying literally the exact same things, but when you mentioned authenticity, you can use questions to guide the sale without being inauthentic.
Yep. Well, it's the same thing, going back to the idea of a system, right? The system can be the way in which you approach things. It doesn't always have to be this in exact order. A lot of times it's going to be your system may have three choices, right? They don't have to be so simple that it's always A or B. But not knowing the key points, like if you're not, if you're in a sales conversation and you forget to ask them if they want to work with you, and it happens, it is funny, but it totally happens. I've sat in on appointments with guys when they walk out and how'd I do? I'm like, you never asked for the business. What do you mean? How did I do? Why'd you even go?
Sometimes they get confused that their goal is to give them a quote and not to make them a customer.
Yeah, 100%. Like, awesome, man. You gave them a price and you walked away. Like, I don't understand. And so, being able to, it takes a lot of the anxiety out if you at least know the core steps, right, that you're going to go through. The key points that you're going to hit on, because if you're in there trying to think, what did I do? What did I not do? It can be overwhelming. And what's really interesting is you have all of these systems and processes that you can set up within these individual things. But I think one of the ways in which a lot of contractors mess up, kind of getting back to the prioritization in those systems, is the systems make prioritizing things significantly easier because you don't have to always think about what you're going to do next. It takes your mind out of it. But taking time to sit down and go, okay, I'm going to develop this sales presentation, or I'm going to develop my script, or I'm going to put together systems so they get these automated texts. Those all have to be, your second quadrant things. They have to be something you sit down and take time for. And if you don't do that, you've got all this stuff floating around your head. That's where people start making mistakes, right? Yeah. You see jobs that get left for 3 weeks and nobody goes to fix it. And you're like, well, how did it get fixed? Well, it was never a priority because they were trying to figure out all these different things that need to be done, just seeing what they could remember. Which I've got, like, my memory is right up there with Dory from Finding Nemo. I wouldn't pretend to be able to keep all that stuff in my head.
Right. Yes, and there's a lot of tools that you guys can use to build these systems, to build a standardized process. And we could certainly go into that probably in another episode and talk about different tools and resources. But when you talk about prioritization, having a predetermined way to do things is right up there with super important and urgent. Now, you don't have to do everything at the same time, but as your business unfolds, you're going to realize what you need to do first. Like, getting business is super important. But as you start to get business, now you want to standardize how you fulfill the service that you provide, so that you can then start to train people effectively and be able to grow your business. And then having accounting so you can track all of the revenue coming in, and being able to effectively budget to determine when and how you can afford a new hire or more marketing, or different things that you might need a budget along the way.
Yeah. And the other thing is you don't always have to, figure these systems all out on your own. You really don't. I mean, you can go on YouTube and watch an entire thing on how to put together the best sales presentation. You can go watch an entire thing on, how to follow up with leads, or how to get a 5-star experience, or even having a system for reviews.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a thing that guys implement in their business, and they go from 3 reviews to 30 reviews, and all of a sudden business starts rolling in. It's a little change.
For sure. So being able to define what the problem is and then looking for a specific solution is going to be a very important, it almost turns into a skill. We often deal with students and partners that just get overwhelmed, and they have sometimes a challenge clearly seeing what the actual problem is. And it can become somewhat of a puzzle determining which piece is actually missing. And a lot of times it's more simple than it's made out to be, but that's the effect of not having organization, is things get really overwhelming pretty quickly.
Yeah. And for everybody, nobody is immune to that, right?
Yeah, we all can be victims of that for sure.
Yeah. You drop somebody with really, really great systems into a unfamiliar environment and they'll run into the same problems.
Yeah.
Right. But usually if they develop those systems, they'll start working on that first thing. And I would say if I had to pick one thing to point out that I think, contractors that already have businesses that aren't doing, mid six figures in their business, usually the first thing I go is like, we do this in the audit, right? Anytime when somebody wants to partner with us, okay, cool. What systems are you using? How do you handle this? How do you do this? And a lot of times they're like, none.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know where we're going to focus first.
Yeah. So as people start to list their to-do items, they may want to start thinking about writing out a system for A, B, and C as part of that list. It may be your sales process. It may be your ordering inventory process. It may be your budgeting for marketing process. Break down those specific parts of your business and create a predetermined way, a step-by-step way to do those things. So eventually you don't have to be the one to actually do it. You can afford and train someone else to do that for you.
Yeah. One question I really like that I think helps separate that. I wish I'd thought of this sooner. But we're working in my girlfriend's business actually, and she does like high level fitness coaching. Okay. And one of the things I noticed is she's working on accounting, and she's spending, quite a fair amount of time on the accounting, and doesn't really like it, but she does it. She's super disciplined. And I was like, well, how many hours a week do you spend on this? She's like, at least 4 or 5, right? Which that's 10% of your time if you're working a 40-hour week. Sure. And if you're past a 40-hour week, you're gonna spend another 4 hours on top of it. It gets to be pretty bad. And so one of the questions that we were talking about was like, okay, if you're looking for what you want to design a system for first, it's like, what are the things that you're spending time on, right, that bring you money, and you want to develop systems around that first. Number 2, what are you spending a lot of time on that does not bring you money? And I want to develop systems around that second, so I can start passing that off to other people. Yeah. And then from there, it's like, what would help us grow faster that we don't yet have in place, and do that. And I think that's a really simple way of prioritizing the systems that you want to build, systematizing building systems.
Yeah. So focusing on the things that make you money first, the things that don't make you money second, and the things that help the business grow overall third.
Correct. Yeah. And ideally by time, right? Because if we're spending a whole bunch of time on something, if we can systematize it, we can improve it. Like, you think like your sales rep, if they were responsible for texting each person and then writing them the actual physical email and then calling it, even if the text and the email only adds 4 minutes, if you're getting 15, 20 leads a day,
yeah,
that adds up.
For sure.
And then you miss business. And so like little things like that, if you're spending a bunch of time on it, I think that's where you want to systematize first. So you can get that time back to be able to step out of the business.
Completely agree. So we'll go ahead and we'll be sure to attach a link to the Eisenhower Matrix in the description. And that way you guys can help clearly designate which tasks are more important or less important, and can hopefully start to put you guys on the track of organizing your day-to-day a little bit better. And would love to hear your feedback on that. You guys want to write in the comments some ideas that might further improve a day-to-day organization for people. Would love to get some feedback on that. And then using the Eisenhower Matrix, come back to the video and write in the comment how it worked for you.
Amen to that. Yeah, we want to make this valuable for you guys as possible. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. If there's something you want to see in the next episode, let us know, and we'll make sure to tackle it.
For sure. We'll go ahead and wrap that up as podcast number 2.
Number two, baby.
Yep. And so we'll see you guys next week. Have a great rest of the week.
Bye, guys.